Very chilling. Joining me now is terrorism expert Richard Miniter and former NYPD detective Bo Dietl. We have the two events in Canada in 3 days. Now we have this attack. I mean, is there anything more chilling than a guy with a hatchet like that coming at you and he got into the police officer's head? What are your thoughts?
When are we going to wake up? We have a mayor here in New York, Mayor Big Bird, that I call him Big Bird. Now, they stopped all the kind of intelligence that we have with all these mosques that are spewing all kinds of stuff against America. They want to radicalize. They want to do this. When are we going to draw the line and realize this is an attack?
I'm looking at this video. I'm asking you, Bo Dietl, based on your years of experience as a top detective, does that look like terrorism to you?
We got to follow we following his web page there, what he was looking at, what he was reading. You know, they say that he was mentally unstable. A lot of these guys are mentally unstable.
Yeah.
And what happens here is that they read this stuff and they get all fired up and they think they have a cause. I don't know if he's a real Muslim, if he's a fake Muslim, but he's certainly attacking police officers there. And he was on that website that is preaching this terrorism activity against police, army, officers and all that. When are we going to wake up? This is the beginning, and I said this a couple of months ago when we sat here.
You said it right on the show.
This is the beginning, and that poor woman got a head cut off there in Oklahoma.
But that wasn't terrorism.
That wasn't
terrorism.
And then that little punk, that major, I don't even want to call him a major, Hassan, whatever his name, he kills workplace violence. When are we going to wake up in America when Americans are dying? This is the beginning. Next thing is going to happen is going to be weapons in subways, attacks in malls. It's going to be body count. Everybody's going to say, what happened? You know what happened? They took the handcuffs and they put it on the cops. They won't let them do stop and frisk. They couldn't even stop and frisk this guy for the hatchet. That's against the law.
All right. Let's go to this guy's Facebook page. It says the solution is to fight, armed struggle, simple. And then he says helicopters, big military will be useless on their own soil. They will not be able to defeat our people if we use guerrilla warfare. So this sounds like terror.
This is a classic dumbed-down version of Sayyid Qutb's In the Shade of the Quran, Milestones. These are the seminal documents cited by the Muslim Brotherhood and by Al-Qaeda and various other Salafi officers.
So you take that right out of the radical Islamic terror.
It's a dumbed-down version, but the
What do you mean by a dumbed-down version?
It's using simplified language, and it's without the Quranic references. But the chain of ideas, the order of those ideas, the presentation of those ideas are the very thing you'd find in the writings of Sayyid Qutb, who is the inspiration for most of the Salafi terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda.
One great distinction with what happened in Canada and their prime minister versus the things that have happened here. Almost immediately, both the press and the prime minister identified the two attacks in Canada as terrorism. Now, the official government position to this day is what happened at Fort Hood, 13 killed, 33 injured, is that's workplace violence. We still don't identify this woman being beheaded in Oklahoma as terrorism.
Well, Sean, you got to see the difference here. Prime Minister Stephen Harper of Canada did identify it as terrorism.
Immediately.
The Canadian press, however, took the New York Times line and said, we don't know. This could be workplace violence. It could be something else. They took the same position as President Obama.
What it is,
and the other thing is those guards in Ottawa were unarmed. They had guns, but they had no ammunition.
This is the political...
You're talking about the guy at the War Memorial that was killed.
And what happens, Sean, on this is the political correctness is so over one side now. You can't even say this. The police commissioner can't come out and say this was an act of terrorism. Our president doesn't have the cognomes to say this is an act of terrorism. That's what the problem is here in America today.
All right, guys, hang on one second. Joining us now with more breaking details on this issue is our own Rick Leventhal. Rick, what's going on?
Well, Sean, we heard earlier from Congressman Peter King that he had learned that this suspect was a Muslim, had radical leanings, and was also anti-white. I'm looking at posts on his Facebook page, and I want to read you a third post that this suspect in this axe attack allegedly wrote. It says, America's military is strong abroad, but they have never faced an internal mass revolt. They are weaker at home. We are scattered and decentralized. We can use this as an advantage. They are centralized and strong, which can be exploited as a weakness. Think of a swarm of bees, and this is in parentheses, Negroes, that surround and attack an elephant, America, to death. Think of a swarm of bees that surround and attack an elephant to death. This is what this suspect allegedly wrote on his page before this axe attack.
Wow, very clear. All right, Rick Leventhal, thanks for that update. Richard, let me ask you, scattered, decentralized, what they're saying is basically reinforcing this idea of lone wolf attacks. We know the leader of ISIS said He encouraged people to engage in these type of attacks. It's happened in Canada. It happened here. They said they'll meet us in New York and that they'll raise the flag of Islam in our White House. Is this the beginning of what may be many lone wolf attacks?
I don't know if this guy is connected to Islamic terrorism or not, but that metaphor of the swarm of bees and the elephant, you see repeatedly in Islamic radical literature, including the so-called philosopher Sayyid Qutb. This shows up again and again. Another thing is Mayor de Blasio cutting off funding and downgrading the NYPD think tank on terrorism, which creates profiles for people to look at. Look, Al-Qaeda overseas is different than the terrorist groups here. Al-Qaeda overseas overwhelmingly come from stable middle-class families, college-educated. The people who carry out homegrown attacks here don't fit that profile. They tend to grow up in non-religious households, broken families, with a different ideology, a different lifestyle. That needs to be mapped and measured. And with de Blasio, the mayor of New York, cutting off funding or reducing funding for NYPD's think tank on this matter, they're leaving New York defenseless, and New York is the #1 target worldwide for terrorism.
Every cop that I talk to out there, I talk to cops every day, their whole soul is taken out of them. They're afraid to stop and question somebody because of all this foolishness of that judge that came with that ruling, and now the cops are their hands are tied behind their back, and they can't do their job. Now we got these psychopathic terrorists. What are we going to do? We've got to let our cops be cops again. Stop and frisk got to come back, and maybe if they stop and frisk this guy, they could have gotten that axe out of him.
But how could we connect this to what's going on with ISIS in Syria and Iraq? I know the president said he wants to degrade and defeat them, but by every account, in Kobani, even outside of Baghdad, we're not offering the support that they say that they need to actually stop them. And they seem to be getting closer and expanding their territory. Are they now a state? The president says they're not.
Well, I don't know, but the president doesn't appear serious about defeating ISIS. If he were, he would deploy U.S. Special Forces who know how to talk to planes and put bombs on targets. Instead, without that expertise, you can't put bombs on targets. Close air support is meaningless, and ISIS will not be defeated. The Iraqis and the Syrians who are fighting against ISIS have been begging for this for weeks.
They said,
months.
We'll meet you in New York. We'll know in the days ahead if this may be the first meeting. Guys, thank you very much. Appreciate it.